What's up, guys? Happy Monday night. I'm just logging on here to be going live with our buddy Aldo Som. Super excited for this one. Just gonna wait for him to jump on, and as soon as he does, we'll catch up because there's a lot to chat about. There he is. Give me one sec. All right. And although we're not really traveling today because he's down the street, which is a little strange. Aldo!
How are you?
Hey, man. Thanks for joining us.
Uh, Thank you for having me.
I was just saying right before you logged on that tonight, we're not traveling halfway around the world. We're going down the street.
How cool is that? That's. I thought do a Brooklyn-centric topic is good.
Oh yeah, man. I didn't know you were a neighbor until somewhat recently.
Yeah, even though I don't sound from Brooklyn, but I'm very proud of Brooklyn.
Dude, you have a beautiful Brooklyn accent.
Yeah, which part?
Exactly. Aldo, how long have you been in Brooklyn, man?
I moved in 2009.
Okay, so you've been here for over 10 years.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
OG. I mean, that's pretty OG. You beat me by a couple of years.
Oh wow, that's cool. I loved it. I lived in a financial district,
Okay.
and I I, I liked it out here.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a cool vibe. It's you gotta have the park. Um, People seem to be fun. Also, it was culturally more diverse, more authentic as a result. I thought this has gravitas, this has depth.
yeah, man. When I
And of
first
course, everybody
experienced
told me, "What the hell are you doing out there?" And I said, and now they're telling me, "Oh wow, cool." They said, "I see what 10 years does."
I mean, absolutely. You were ahead of the curve, man.
Yeah, so I
I
loved it.
I moved to Brook when I first came to Brooklyn. I remember just feeling like I was home. New York was always really, or Manhattan was always really exciting for me. It always was this place where I just like I couldn't get enough of dining and experiencing wine. But when I got to Brooklyn, I felt like okay, I can live here for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you have more space. Again, it's also more chill. People are, as I'm from Austria, which is not very difficult to make out given my accent, is people seem to be more conscious about the environment, more conscious about their neighbors.
Yep.
It's just very different. It has more depth in a sense. And I hope I don't insult anyone by that, but it's just when you just go to the farmers market, I mean now it's a little different story, but when you go to
Sure.
the farmers market, you see other friends and you wave them hello, you know the people then.
It is a special place,
Yeah.
and it's hard to describe if you haven't sunk your teeth into Brooklyn. So
Mhm.
I love that you're a neighbor. Um, and I have to selfishly ask, how did you find Leon and Son? Because I remember walking into the shop one day and I was like, I know that guy. That's world's best sommelier, Aldo Son.
Uh, I think I came in cycling clothes.
That's right. That's
Which
right.
I typically do because
True.
I always have a little duffel bag with me. And on my ride back, I thought I'd just pull over quickly and with the helmet, with the whole gear. And that's why at first nobody paid any attention to me, which I love. So it
Yeah.
was completely unrecognized. But the reason why was there was a neighbor actually I had here in the building
Mm-hmm.
who told me he's buying, and I turned him onto wine,
Yep.
and then I turned him onto champagne. And
Sure.
he's one of my biggest students who talk off like insane on champagne.
So cool.
I wish I would have had that kind of impact on all of my sommeliers with that guy. I mean, through the roofs. And he told me, "Oh, I have this cool store down there on Fulton." Really, in Fulton? Because that's not typically because I take always the Seventh Avenue stop.
Yep.
That's typically not where I go. So, and then I went by there and I went on there and checked it out. I thought, "Oh wow, they have a rather eclectic selection, for kind of this neighborhood." I mean, you need to know when I
Get it.
moved into this neighborhood and when I checked out the neighborhood, I walked down Washington Avenue, and they were on every block the really old school liquor stores, with
Yeah.
the plexiglass,
Dude,
and the old barber stores in every block. And I thought, oh, this is interesting.
No, listen, it's a lot has changed
Yeah,
in a very short period of time.
yeah.
You know, when the shop is going to be 5 years at the end of this month, which is crazy. But in that time, you know, I'm going to ask what's in that glass in a second. Uh, in that time, you know, because before then there was no, if people who don't know Clinton Hill, but now Clinton Hill has a Michelin star, and you know, Emily Pizza, all these like really famous New York establishments are now right here. It's just like one of those, I don't know, I'm really inspired by the neighborhood. I'm really inspired by Brooklyn. There's a lot of my peers and the businesses I'm surrounded by, they're pushing. They're really pushing, and they really believe in what they're doing. It's a very cool thing.
Oh, they're very niche, very focused on their products. But
Yeah.
again, they're community centric, you know. And listen, this has to be honored, especially in times like these.
So it's so funny. No, the person who just asked a question, I have a shop in Michigan, and they just asked if you're drinking white Burgundy or Gruner, which I think is really funny because I think I know what you're drinking, uh, because we talked a little bit earlier. But what's in the glass?
I went into the cellar. I have a cellar. This is the great perks in my building. There's a
I love
cellar,
it.
and it's white Burgundy.
Awesome. That makes
And
two of us, my friend.
yeah, because you pitched this idea. Actually, I was very opposed to it at first, for the obvious reason.
Hmm.
And then I thought, you know, I had such a great day, and
Oh,
so
cool.
fun. And our conversation, I had earlier talk already, and was such a, you know, when you connect with true people and true humans, I think this is very important, you know.
I mean,
And you have to celebrate that because, you know, every day could be your last day. So why not taking advantage of it?
I mean, and this sort of way of communicating, you know, yesterday or a couple of days ago, I was in Mount Etna. Today, you were in Germany. You know, it's one of those things where we're finding new ways to reach each other, which is
No,
so special.
it's not Kosh Cordon Shalman. I'm not quite there yet. Have to work a couple more years.
Right?
No, I can show you what it is. I picked a fun wine which I absolutely love. It's a Aussi du Rez.
Is that
Uh,
Rouleau's? Yeah.
it's Rouleau, yeah, and it's the 2011 vintage.
Oh, cool.
Uh,
What an interesting. I mean, that's when you see the producers start showing their stuff.
but I think first vintage he had was 2010 there, and it's just a plot which I really always liked, even
Mhm.
though it's not. I mean, Rouleau obviously is known for his Merceaus. There's no question about it. With its Perrier, with its Boucher or Tesson Luché, which is his Twitter handle. But I always like that plot because you know, it gives you so much value
Sure.
uh, for what you get into the glass. I mean,
Well,
often, you know,
yeah, we were talking briefly on the phone earlier, and we were talking about Merceau. And so you inspired me because I haven't opened up a bottle of Merceau since all this craziness happened.
I have to apologize, but I have to interrupt you quickly. We
Please.
have even a viewer from Sweden, from Stockholm, Jonas, who has a super cool wine bar in
Oh, I love it.
Stockholm. Yeah.
I would love to visit it.
Oh my God, it's an incredible. You go there, it's one of the best wine cities I like in Europe.
And you know, my wife is on these threads always. So anytime she gets these hints, I know she's writing it down.
Oh,
So,
yeah, you gotta go to Folly. It's just fun. It's easygoing. I mean, and if you want to, want to eat in certain places, he's the man to talk to.
well,
Sorry, Jonas, you might get some emails. It's my fault. Blame
is
it on
this
me.
Jonas Sandberg I see?
Yes,
Okay,
super
cool.
cool guy. Super, super good guy.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. Now, I I have a question that's a little selfish, so sorry for a couple people who are on here that this doesn't apply to. You're not just the wine director at Le Bernardin. You're doing so many things, Aldo. Um, you have your wine in Austria, the wine project, or the winery. Um, you're an author now. You have the wine bar. You are the ambassador for Zalto, which I made sure to do the right thing and have my Zalto today. I just am curious how you organize your time because I mean, I literally wrote it down in my notes. How does he do it? Because it's a lot, man. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I question myself this occasionally. But first, I interrupted you earlier. You're drinking Merceau, you said.
Yeah, a little.
I pay attention.
I'm drinking a little producer I didn't know much about until last year, actually. I have to thank Peter Weygamp. And it's a producer called DuPont Phone. And I like them for the value you were talking about. This is a tiny plot called Les Clos. And then they do TA. They do Merceau TA I sell for $55 for. And the other reason, which for Merceau TA, for context is,
There's not many Merceaus Lieu-Dits sold for this kind of price these days anymore, sadly.
and no, it's true. And the other thing is these wines are meant for consumption. They're a really charming open style that as much as I just adore Burgundy, having to push through reduction and push through tense, people who are really building structures to live a long time. Sometimes you just want to have, get right to the point. And DuPont Fond is one of those wines that I feel is is really embracing just pleasure. So I have a lot of fun drinking these wines.
Yeah. So now responding to your question.
Yes.
I mean, look, when I came to the US in '04, I've realized Americans are very hungry about wine. And I've realized also I was kind of with Americans became hungry just with the millennial change. That's when these things start really taking off. But for me as an Austrian sommelier, I always looked at one thing. And as I'm service and hospitality oriented, yes, you can look at wine only, but you have to look also a little bit further. And as an Austrian sommelier, it's impossible to get around the topic glassware. And just travel through France, which is a country which has a humongous history with it, have the greatest wines, also the most expensive wines in the world, and sometimes you're drinking these great wines out of glasses, which is maybe just an elevated version of a rock glass.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to me, kind of that strikes me a little bit. And when I came onto Zalto, at first, they said it's the best glass in the world. So I said, what does that even mean? Right? It's like someone tells me this is the best strawberry in the world. What does that even mean? This is meaningless. So I've tested it to the core.
Okay.
Because the first thing you think of is they break very easily. I've tried that actually, and I didn't accomplish breakage a lot.
No,
I mean, yes, it's a glass. You can break anything in the world, but okay. But I love the performance. I loved how the glass is magnifying flavors. Sadly, also flaws as a result. I mean, I've tested this on unexperienced wine people who just got into wine.
Sure.
They knew something was off when the wine was corked.
So interesting.
Really interesting to see. And I always check out other people. Because what I think is what I think. But how does someone else look at it? And I learned this actually when I wrote the book, Wine Simple. We wine nerds are sometimes nerding out on the craziest stuff, soil type, O2 versus O1, this vineyard versus that.
Sure.
Often for people, I just want a glass of Pinot Grigio.
Sure.
And you gave him a lecture of all the sub-regions of Vinha Verde.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
So you got to talk in the same kind of channel so you can connect. And so with Zalto, it's basically the same thing. You realize very quickly, and I've done these tastings also with people, you taste one and the same wine out of 3 different shapes of glasses, also qualities. And it's like listening to music.
Yeah.
That's, you listen to the same song from 3 different speaker systems. One you inherited from your grandfather, one of a newer one, and then one of the top end ones, and you have a total different experience.
I love the music analogy.
Yeah.
I love the music analogy. I think it can work. I think it works with the instruments. I think it can work with one of my dear best friends is a music producer, and he loves wine, but he doesn't want to go down. He doesn't need to learn appellations and this and that. but he wants to understand why the wine will taste how it tastes. And we use the analogy of music all the time with manipulation, and the fact that you're using Zalto as like essentially your stereo is how clearly do you want to hear the music?
Yeah, well, that's the one part. So, I took on this project for me, just endorse it, and trust me, in the recession, it was not an easy feat to get Zalto on its legs. But now, look, we managed to pull this up. I sell them over my website, aldosom.com. And again, it takes a while to come. It takes always, no one will buy this glass off a shelf.
Sure.
The moment you've held this glass in your hand, the show is over. You're hooked and there's no escape for you anymore. It's funny, I've observed this many times.
I'm sure
Especially
really
with
special.
husbands, they're very upset because they come after me and said, my wife does not want to touch any other glass. You know how many other glasses I have in my apartment? I said, yeah, now you can throw them out and buy on Saltos. Should have listened to your wife in the first place.
I try to do that.
Yeah. So that's the one part. By the way, Talia is here also. I see my beard. They're all pointing out my beard because this is highly unusual for me.
Oh, you look beautiful.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I think there's a barber necessary really badly. But so the other project with Storm and Kracher, the Grüne Vedina project, it came at the same time. I traveled in Argentina, and winemakers down there asked me to criticize their wine because they were very excited I visited them. And I said, me criticizing them, and who am I? And then I realized actually it's true. I criticize only but make nothing. And then I started exploring, and I shared this idea with Gerhard Kracher, who just visited New York, and we had a lunch at Sri Papaya in Queens.
Cool.
And I explained him my idea, what I wanted. I said, listen, I want to get my hands dirty. I want to see what that means. We talk about reduction. We talk about this. I want to see what that's, when you do this, what is the result? So otherwise, I feel like, it's a little hypocritical.
Sure.
And I want to learn that. And I like to get my hands dirty. I mean, in agriculture. And you know what? It was a humbling experience. He said to me immediately, why don't we do it together? And we shared immediately what we did not want to make, and we all aligned with it.
Yep.
And 29 was the first vintage. And what a humbling experience it is, first of all. As a sommelier, you think you know a little bit about wine. Then you walk with winemakers through vineyards and talking about farming and management and that stuff. And
sure.
Right? And that's actually not the worst. The worst is still, I thought I was an okay taster. Tasting with winemakers at different stages, because they look for flaws and for stuff. It was like humbling and sobering to this at the same time.
I mean,
it's
sure.
Scary to see.
I mean, Aldo, the person I'd love your take on this, but the way a sommelier is tasting wine and what they're looking for is very different, I believe, than what a winemaker is assessing in their own wines. Would you agree with that?
Yes, because we get to taste the finished product. I mean, look, I'm very spoiled and I'm very, very fortunate about it because I work at Le Bernardin and, of course, the wine bar. So I can visit many, many wineries. But it's like visiting a large family. They line up the well-behaved children up in the front, and the naughty ones are locked away. But the reality is, from which one we learn the most? It's from the naughty ones, when things go wrong.
Sure.
And I give you a specific example, which we've had. We do spontaneous fermentation. We don't inoculate on our Grüne Vedinas.
Is it with a pied de cuve, or you guys use you just let it warm up and just do the thing?
That's it. One barrel got stuck in 2014. And which typically is not a big deal because it will restart in the spring and it's by all means.
Sure.
Not that barrel.
Mm.
So we're stuck with 35 grams of residual sugar. And I can tell you one thing, the whole world is not craving for Grüne Vedina with 35. Nah. So what are you going to do? You open the spout and empty this barrel. right? And let it down the drain. And I had this discussion with somebody who were very dogmatic about spontaneous. They will only buy wines with spontaneous. I said, first of all, I promise you, you're not going to make that out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, if you say this, you're exposing yourself really badly.
Sure.
That's one. The second one is, when I told them the story, I said, look, there's always exceptions to that rule. You know, you're dealing with nature. Nature does not cooperate with you. You adjust to it, what you get as a result.
Sure.
And also, of course, it's a result of your actions you do. It's kind of predicting a little bit.
Well, has coming into the production side of things make you taste wine differently or approach how you buy wine differently?
I believe it maybe become a little better sommelier, because I'm a firm believer, and I believed this before also already, that we humans are very weak in tasting, in a sense, because we always taste. It's very hard for us humans to taste analytical. Because look, let's be honest. We too are very passionate about wine.
I hope.
But
yeah.
you might but you might like wine A, and I might like wine number B, and you both rave about it, but it's not analytical. It's very hard to taste analytical, and I think that made me taste super analytical. Forget the label, forget the vintage, forget the producer. Just look, what is the wine? And then judge. That's why kind of the blind tasting is actually the real part, because you're taking labels away, you're taking brands away, and really taste, what is it? Yeah,
I think that tasting, you have to be tasting with such precision for the work that you're doing, because you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're looking for wines to complement some of the best cuisine in the world. You're looking for wines to be a foil for this experience. That's really an incredible responsibility. And I'm really interested to know about how you're approaching wine when you're thinking about food. And specifically, I want to ask about Le Bernardin's food and how you're creating pairings, because then I want to ask about, because we're all cooking right now. So, and we're all drinking a lot of wine right now. And then I want to jump to kind of like what it's like at home to be thinking about wine and food. Le Bernardin.
That's a loaded question. This is the funny part, when I came to America, most of restaurants they have a tasting menu, but they didn't really do wine pairings. And if it was always like the fifth wheel on the car.
Yep, sure.
And to me, as a European sommelier, you always focus onto that part, and you're really proud of that, because it's a very quick measure of your skill set. And because to see really testing where is someone's palate and how can you adjust to the chef, because as a sommelier, you have to adjust to the chef. When I work with Eric, he creates the dish. I have much more flexibility on the wine side, to alter. Right? For instance, if a Sancerre is too tart, I use another Sauvignon Blanc, or use another wine. So I often, at first when I started there, they started looking, because I got a new dish presented. So let's assume this is the dish, for lack of a better. So I came with a tray sometimes of 6 or 10 glasses into the kitchen. Okay. And of course, all the chefs look, what is the guy doing now? And I start tasting each wine with it.
I love it.
And had a numbering system, this worked, this didn't work. And made notes. So if I saw residual sugar, a wine with a little touch of residual sugar worked, but wasn't quite perfect, I made a note of it. And then I went the second round and started, dialing it really in.
And this is when you first started.
Yeah. I still do that.
This is still the process.
Yeah. So I try not to taste more than 3 dishes, because it's really intense.
Sure.
Because you really put the focus down. And working with Eric is very challenging as a sommelier, because he has such a refined cuisine. He's so clean in the cooking, and often how he calls it, barely touched, lightly cooked, almost raw. So he leaves the fish really barely touched, and is extremely playful in the sauces.
So cool.
Which for me is the flip side. Often, I often look more on the sauce than on the protein itself, which doesn't make an enormous circle. It doesn't make any sense. But this is actually the reverse. I mean,
I
because
find
he's so delicate about it.
Yeah, and I find that so fascinating. I really, really do. And I'm just, what is it that cinches the pairing for you? Is it?
Well, it's a. I mean, I share something. When they come up with a new dish, it takes them often quite some time to build that up. Sometimes I'm part, I listen into the meetings, but then they alter those things as well. So when a dish comes out, typically after 2 weeks, I check back. We did a couple twists because
Mm,
to just add one herb or one little other ingredient, which might look minor, it changes the entire pairing.
mm,
And it's very quickly obvious. Because if you have such refined cuisine, you don't have much wiggle room. If you work with a pork belly of a really fatty dish, I mean, you have much more leeway because the fat is so much more forgiving in that
sure.
sense. So you have more leeway. There, it's no leeway. It's really, really tight.
Yeah. So like, you're not even talking about three Michelin star food in general. You're talking about the food of Le Bernardin. Like just the caressed seafood of Le Bernardin is like, it feels like you have to thread a needle to nail the pairings.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, listen, often sometimes it's really challenging. And then also, we have another challenge is, the kitchen starts at 5 o'clock. That's when it tastes the sauces.
and you have
And
to, and the wine changes.
well, in the kitchen it's hot, so the
Yeah.
sauce reduces. So for me, it's important. So you see me often tasting the sauce nonstop during a service, just because at one point, the sauce reduces a little bit. When does the chef readjust it a little bit?
Mm.
So I have to find kind of the middle way. Where do you dial that in? And we had this. It's a true story. We had once, I think it was a monkfish, and I had a Chateauneuf du Pape with it because they served a red wine
So
focused
cool.
sauce. And yeah, he gives me one thing we really work on that, no matter, of course, fish and white wine is an obvious, white wine with fish or white meat, and red wine with dark meat. I mean, it's an easy guideline, but life is a little bit more complex than that.
Agree.
So I find also, I've done champagne tastings. Champagne can lead you through an entire meal.
Sure.
But I just find a glass of red wine is good for the soul, and it's very comforting.
Mm.
And
And monkfish, right? Monkfish is meaty and
yeah, but it depends on the sauce and the way how it's prepared. But
sure.
the way how again it was seared, so it had kind of that smoky tone a little bit in the crust a little bit. And I think it was a Iberico ham sauce. And again, don't quote me on that. And Chateauneuf du Pape worked absolutely perfectly with it. And all of a sudden, we got complaints the dish is too salty. And the chefs became almost desperate to a point where they said, we didn't oversalt this. This does not taste salty. And I realized that the wine all of a sudden changed. Wines have also this curse. I can see this on my wines sometimes,
Yeah.
it's
That's
really
that's
funny. It's hard to explain.
that's what I thought
So
you meant when you said that tasting started at 5, that the wines will start evolving by 8 by the you're
that
seeing it
too.
at the end of the night.
But, when we do wine pairings, we go through so much, it really changes that quick. And so all of a sudden we got these complaints, and I realized it's actually the wine. The tannins made this really pop.
Mm.
It was really bizarre. And the reason why we got so much focus onto the pairings, because Frank Bruni came at one point in and wrote this mega article. And ever since, wine pairings took us off like insane.
Wow.
It's a significant part.
He was the food critic then?
He was actually, Eric set me up. It was a special feature on Food and Wine magazine. And it
Cool.
was a week after Frank Bruni retired from the Times. He came right after and he grilled me. It's still that article is up. I think, what was it called? The world's worst customer versus the world's best sommelier. And
I'm
I
sure
was
you
very
won.
ill briefed, and very ill briefed by Eric, and they made this out. It was really and again, but that brought really kind of these articles came up. It was really crazy, and you could see the pairing sales, they exploded literally
I
again,
mean,
and that's when we got onto the map.
it's an thank you for sharing all of that. I really appreciate it. And for me, like, I feel like a little kid right now because when I went to college and couldn't afford really anything, I went to school in
We've all
Illinois.
been there.
But I went to school in Illinois, and this was before, you know, Instagram and Facebook was still thefacebook.com. And I really would read Grub Street every single day. I was so fascinated by the New York dining scene. I found it, it's what made me fall in love with this industry, was reading about what was happening in the big leagues and hearing about what you're talking about. And it takes me right back to that moment. I'm still just so excited to
You
be
know,
tasting the food and drinking the wine.
I share a funny story with you.
Please
And Eric is gonna kill me for that, but it's a difference.
bring it on.
Last year we had a tasting of Chateau Ozon.
Cool.
It was a client who had a private dinner who opened Chateau Ozon down to 1921 out of a Gero, if I'm not mistaken. Crazy. And he asked for pairing. And of course, he came earlier. We sat in the conference room, and Eric started talking, and it was one of his days where, I don't know, it was full moon or something. And he said, I don't understand you wine guys because you all come always with, we start always with the rich wine, with the young wines first, which are so rich and so powerful, and with the wines which have so much delicacy. You know, by the time everybody's drunk by the time, and you can't really enjoy it. So he wanted
Wow.
to reverse it, and to make things even worse, he suggested. So we had, I think, a pigeon. We had a lamb, and then he said, "Why don't we make an octopus as an entree?" And I said, "What?"
So was he messing with you?
He was messing with me, but at the same time, he was messing with the client. And of course, the client decided with Eric rather. We said, this does not make any sense, right? How can he do this?
You know,
Right?
at the end of these
As the entree.
Instagram lives, we get the option to save it or to delete it. Just let me know.
No, it's fine. So he did it, and then of course he always holds against me, and then we reviewed the menu again. He was like doing the menu description to write the menu, and then he was still poking me, and I said, "Look, just for the sake, you go to a restaurant, Eric Repère, go to a restaurant XYZ, and you see this menu, and they finish with an octopus. We both know the answer. What do you think?" And of course, he was still holding against me. And I said, "Why don't we call our both together friend Jay McInerney?" Right?
And I'm sure he can.
And we explained the menu, and Jay said, "What? He's serving me the octopus after the lamb? This must be a hell of an octopus." True story. All of a sudden, you could see the cringe, and I started laughing, and I got the total kick out of it. However,
I'm sure.
I have to give it to him because he was in the kitchen. He explained every single dish. He was in the kitchen. He used every skill set you could tell to make this sauce, to work this with the sauce. And I have to give it to him. It was an epic pairing.
Awesome.
But he was really sweating. It's true story. I had him on my social media. That's why I put it up too. But I saw him this one of my favorite days I worked at Le Bernardin because he was on.
How long ago was that?
That was last year. Last year, I think, was it fall?
Oh man,
We still laugh about it.
I thought this was like, you know, when you first started to start.
No. So that's why I'm still laughing about it. It's just, but those are the things. Again, we look for the pairing, and I constantly ran into the kitchen just to touch the sauce up to really tweak.
Yeah.
Right. So, and he really dialed it in. He used a little bit foie gras fat just to give that sauce a little the kick up, and that made the magic work.
So cool. Thank you for sharing that.
No.
This is an awesome story. Now, let's push the 3 Michelin stars to the side, and let's just talk about, because I know we're doing it here. I know a lot of my customers are doing it. I'm sure many people listening are doing it. We're cooking every night, and we're making fun, inspired meals, and we're getting pairing questions all the time. Do you have, because I know you have in this awesome book that helps people. Do you have good advice for people?
We have a whole feature. a whole feature written onto it because I take pride in that. Because
Yeah,
let me put it in a different way. I don't have the liberty of judging people, especially at the restaurant. I
sure.
just don't. It's a luxury I do not have. And I learned this in my very early days as a sommelier when I worked with one of my biggest mentor who sold a customer, and I remember as it was yesterday, a 1976 Lafitte with fried octopus. Yet the octopus again, it keeps hunting these octopus. No, sorry, fried calamari, fried calamari. And I said, what?
Yeah, sure.
This is a terrible pairing. And he said to me, look, when you look at the client, that's exactly what he had in mind. He wanted to have this type of wine. Are you really willing to go there right now and tell him this is a terrible pairing? Look at his facial reaction. He said, well, he clearly is enjoying himself. I said, exactly.
Yeah, it's about pleasure.
So it's about pleasure and where the current state of the customer is. So, however, I learned one thing. This is good and fair. Some people, just want to have their meal with their wine, and by all means, it's all fine. On the other hand, I've learned one thing, and I had this happen to me too, personally. You just go in an epic restaurant, the food is really good, the wine is really good, but you go out there and you don't feel the hunger. This didn't really strike me.
Sure.
And it's at home, basically the same thing. What does give you more pleasure when the wine interacts with the food you cooked? And it doesn't have to be fancy wine. This can be the most simple Chianti.
Yeah.
Again, the moment you have harmony, it just gives you joy. This starts
Yeah.
in your relationship.
I mean, Aldo, the last time I saw you in the shop, you were buying Chianti,
Yeah.
which made me really happy.
I mean, look, this is a beautiful time where, I mean, it's a terrible time and it's a very challenging time, but it's also a time where you can have time to reflect for yourself and have time for yourself because things slow down significantly. Now, look, I'm hopelessly optimistic. Everything in life what you get has a reason for it. You might not get the answer right away, but make the best out of it because I'm not a politician. I'm not an economist. I cannot change it. So what am I bothering with all these thoughts? Let's enjoy every day because I might not even survive the worst.
I mean, it's a time for the simple pleasures, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the things that I keep finding in these conversations, because many of them have been with with producers, is that we're dealing with something that has been around a whole lot longer than us, and there's something very eternal about wine, and there's something very mystical about cooking an incredible meal, opening maybe an incredible bottle, just a good bottle.
But
And
look, we put a whole we put a whole part, if you see me, how to pair, a little guidelines. And you know what I do is often, it's not unusual that I open 3 bottles a night. Now, of course, if you're 2 people at home, this might be rather excessive.
But it'll keep.
No,
Right?
at the first look, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
I compare. And this is where the learning experience really comes in.
I
Look,
love you saying this.
I compare. My Chianti is maybe it's maybe a little weird example because I might be too out there, even though I do it. I taste it from different villages.
Cool.
So you can see the structure. Or you taste 3 different Cabernets, or you taste 3 different Chardonnays.
Sure.
And you look, of course, I'm not going to drink all 3 bottles. No, I'm tasting it the next day. How do they hold up? How does it change? And then I taste it the day after again. Look, some wines might hold up. Some of them I might have to use for a sauce. Okay, fine. But I also taste wines often which I buy, which I typically often don't like. Now, this might sound rather awkward, but often I recheck whether I haven't a look of something which I might have overlooked because we humans judge very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We taste the wine, form an opinion, and that's the opinion. But
Sure.
It's a little bit like you meeting a human being just from seeing this person. You archive this person right there. And when you chit chat with that person, you warm up a little bit. This is a totally different person than I initially thought.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
And
I recheck you see this again.
It's
So
an,
with
and
I drink it over 3 days.
it's a it's a really fascinating way to evaluate wine. And it's funny, it's never been for me, it's never been more like what you're saying, which is why I like Perked Up, was because we can't see our reps, our beautiful sales reps, who was just like, I love the people that I work with. I love my wholesalers. I love my vendors. And what they do is they've been sending bottles. You know, they'll send, hey, what are you looking for? What's the store? And so I take them home and I do exactly what you're saying. I will crack 3 or 4, taste, 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 put them in the fridge. Someone asked if you can put it in a standard fridge. I say it's fine to put it in the standard fridge. I don't
I
know.
do that too. I
Yeah.
cork it and put it in. It's just cold. I like it when it's chilled, and don't leave it out.
Yeah,
Some
exactly.
people have a Coravan. Now I know there's certain opinions out there who say Coravan changes it a little bit, and I like different opinions. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Listen, the one thing I say, and again, I like that you're here because you get to, well, I'm just feel really grateful that you're having this conversation with me, but um, I get to share some of the things that we tell customers, and I'd love your opinion on them, because when we talk about food pairings and I try to find simple, really simple ways of giving people advice, uh, I like to, I always think about how I garnish my food, or the finishing, the last touch of the food, whether it's acid, squeeze of lemon, whether it's something herbaceous or biting, or it's a little pat of butter. You can find that finishing touch in wine. And for people, unlike going to a Le Bernardin, where there's probably a lot more that you're looking for in terms of structure and profile, I
You
find
know,
that
it's a super challenging question because if we both would cook, follow the same recipe, and compare our dishes, the outcome, it would be different.
yeah, but I
This
think
is like our handwriting. It's different.
totally. But I
And so you
think
have to adjust the wine to it if you look for perfect pairing.
perfect pairing, yes. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for someone. I'm looking for a compass.
Yeah, but we're not wired that way. This is we cannot afford that.
Totally, totally.
This
But
was the biggest challenge when we opened the wine bar, the Aldo Wine Bar in 2014. All the sous chefs of Le Baron wrote the menu. Our Maître D started with the service. And for us, it was the biggest challenge, how do we did not want to make another three Michelin star restaurant out of it. This was a
but
wine
it's
bar.
the, but it's the standard.
I know, but for us, for our Maître D, I just remember a situation when we trained the service. Uh, for him, it's a major deal whether the plate is served from left or from right. But
Yeah,
it's a wine bar. Who cares?
sure.
And for him, it was like,
But you're still giving people open arm service there. People are still getting
no, no, no.
it's.
We try
eh,
to be friendly. Listen, if people come in and they are treated like arrogant or snotty, we've lost the show right from the beginning. This
For
has
sure.
to be warm. Listen, I like to smile. I like to make fun about myself. What's the point?
By the way, someone asked a good question. How does Aldo have a perfect haircut through quarantine? Speaking of
No, this is all natural. This is all natural. So it's a desperate haircut.
buddy, you're looking
But
you're
thank you
looking
so
good.
much. Actually, didn't shave for the first part. I said I shave when I go back to work, but I didn't anticipate coronavirus would stay that long, so I had to take it off once.
I mean, this thing keeps coming back.
Yeah.
To my
So
wife's chagrin.
yeah.
I try to get
Now
rid of it.
all the natural wine people they love that because it's I tell it's without SO2.
Hey man, it's without SO2. You live in Brooklyn, Aldo. Do people ever ask you about quote natural wine in Le Bernardin? Is this a thing that you guys get asked about?
It's an interesting question. Yes.
Okay.
Um, and it's a true story. Before I wrote Wine Simple, I was always on the conventional side. I personally felt, I mean, while I like the idea, not to using chemicals, not to use pesticides and every that, but wine as a result, the moment you start making wine is not natural right from the get-go anymore.
So I mean,
The term itself is also rather misleading because what does that even mean?
so
It's
you're not
not
making like
legally
natural
justified.
wine, is what you're saying.
No, I mean, what is natural wine? I mean, if I
Exactly.
drink Thierry Almond, that's natural wine.
Sure.
Or if I drink Giuseppe Rinaldi, that's natural wine. But that for often people doesn't trigger natural wine because for them it has to be funky or
Sure.
cloudy. So again, that's very unclear. Now look, I wrote a whole chapter onto it, and
And it's also unclear.
it's
Just to
very
be
unclear. It's not really, but often so much flaws are packaged into that and sold with it as part of natural wine. Um, and I wrote a whole chapter onto it, and I actually have to admit, you cannot. I learned one thing, and one thing I try always to be as open as I can, and stay also, what are people looking for? And I've interviewed Rajpar, I've interviewed Bobby Stuckey, Pascaline, but Rajpar was the first one. I had a whole questionnaire together,
hmm
and he gave me so interesting answers that I've reached out immediately to Alice Fearing. I said, Alice, I don't know anyone better in this field and more exposed to that. Would
hmm
you mind if I pick your brain? This is what I'm planning. And of course, Christine Mulke, who wrote the book with me, said, she's going to kill you. I said, that's not the point. My point is being, look, I tap her brain. She is in the forefront. And I was very well prepared. I met her on a morning. We've talked for, I think, over 3.5 hours. It was
Okay.
a full, intense, really interview. And then it was followed by another at least 1.5 page email conversation. I have to admit, this was the single greatest day in writing this book. No, but we've learned one thing, that we both came from a different educational angle. While I was very formal, European sommelier training, she didn't have any training in that sense, very free spirited. But ultimately, we came down to the same thing. What does give you you want a delicious wine?
Yeah.
This is what it comes down to. And what is delicious is personal for you. And it was just a stunning conversation. And to put this further, actually, we got this part actually was reviewed by Chances Robinson, and she actually raved about how we brought this to the point. And to make a step further, I actually went, and I know you have a lot of his wines. Last year, I went to the winery and worked with Gerhard,
Oh yeah.
and I had an hour time, I had an hour spare time before I had to go to the airport. I said, "Would you mind calling Christian Cheetah? Because it's in the same village." And he says, "But you don't like natural wine anyway. You hate these wines." I said, "Yeah, but look, maybe I've overlooked something, and I just want to make sure I didn't. And it would be arrogant not to go into that part." So I visited him, and I have to admit, he was lovely. He was very informative, And I have to admit, now look, you don't have to like every wine. So what? It's not a big deal. But there were some wines actually I was really inspired,
Yeah. The
and
wines
I
are.
actually loved that visit.
Yeah. The wines can be good, but the fact that you're open, and I think that is, it's such a loaded. I'm so glad you wrote about it, and
No, no, I
I
see it on the comments. And Cheetah, whenever I tell this story, Cheetah brings so much, again, also comments on it, which is great. It stirs emotions.
I
But
mean,
the thing is, we,
it's bringing
this
a
goes
lot
on
of people
both
to wine.
ends.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's bringing
This is the
a lot of
great
people.
thing on natural wine. It brings an audience in which we've never had before. But it
Yeah,
goes both ways. It goes not only on the natural side, it has to go on the other side too.
yeah. Well,
And
it's really, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I find the conversation. I mean, we have the conversation so much in the industry, and imagine opening a Brooklyn wine store in 2015. You know, it's and being a younger guy opening a Brooklyn wine store. People are assuming that I'm going to be hardcore natural, and if you see although you know my shop,
no, but that's why I was impressed.
it's an
Again,
interesting conversation.
it's that's why. And again, listen, I'm too Austrian. I wouldn't say that if I wouldn't mean it. I was impressed when I walked in because you found a super balance
Thank you.
between both worlds. And also what is hot right now, what is interesting right now. Um, and again, look around in sometimes in the neighborhood. It's not, you hit their niche with no question. And
Well,
again, this is great. You deliver to both worlds, which,
and you have to stay open, right? But you also have to stay. But I'm always going to sell Chianti Classico. I'm always going to sell. You know, those things are always really important for me. And like threading the needle, and like always being willing to say, "Oh, cool. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try this, and I'm gonna take this on," while never forgetting the things that I just like wake me up in the morning when it comes to wine. Uh, for me, that will continue to be what's so exciting about being in retail, and I'm sure about building a list.
see, Chianti
Uh,
is a perfect example you just put up also. And that's why I actually went there. And this is full disclosure. When I grew up in Austria, we had always a very strong Italy connection. And
oh,
I
sure.
actually have been in Florence to learn Italian language in 1992. And there I took the opportunity to taste all the villages. And I wrote this in the book. So every day we went up to Fiesole, which is just slightly above because Florence has a similar summer climate than we have here in New York. It's rather muggy. And up there always came a cool breeze in. And we tasted the wines up there, so I could taste them from all different villages. And then, like many areas, they become often a little bit too commercialized because they become too successful.
Sure.
And then often it tastes a little meaningless. But right now, I find a little renaissance coming back into Chianti, and there's some really delicious producers. I mean, I always, I just find this wine just simply pleasurable for a pasta. What
You
we
you
have right now.
you broke up. I didn't hear the producer, but I think it's Monte Raponi. Is that what? Yeah.
Yeah, I like Monte Rapone, but I like also I had I had too much Rouleau already. You have the Retromarco.
Oh yeah, the Retromacia from Monte Bernardi.
Yeah, I love that wine.
Oh,
Yeah, I love that wine. And again, it's not an expensive wine.
he was here the week before it was a pandemic, and we did it. You're going to be talking with Joe Campanelli. We did a dinner.
No,
I,
not yet. Not yet. It's coming, hopefully.
oh, it's
I
coming.
have to
Well,
ask him first.
oh, sorry, Joe. Uh, but we did a dinner with Joe and with Monte Bernardi literally a week before it was a pandemic, and it was my last producer that I saw face to face. And we had pasta and drank his wine here in Brooklyn, and right by we're neighbors, man. We're like 2 blocks away from each other, but
Yeah,
just down the street. It feels like months ago. Uh, Now we're getting up, Aldo. I just want to give you the time alert because
I know, I see it.
I knew this was gonna happen when we talked on the phone earlier. I was like, "Oh, we're gonna hit it. We're gonna hit the hour." Um,
It's fine. You can turn off again and turn on again. I'm cool with it. I still have a little bit wine left.
yeah, me too, buddy. But you know what? At some point, I have to spend time. I am married, despite the amount of time I spend in the
You want to
shop.
keep it that way.
I would like to keep it that way. But we should keep making this regular business, man. I like chatting with you. This is such a pleasure. I feel the biggest compliment is when I see people who are at the top of their game. And Aldo, you are absolutely at the top of our industry in my eyes.
I don't
Come,
see myself like that.
well, man, well, I do. So, you coming into the shop and supporting what we do, it means a tremendous amount. And one of my very first customers, I'll never forget it. I was so tired. I had no employees. I had a little iPad. And I just graduated French Culinary Institute a couple of years prior. Was Scott Carney, and Scott Carney comes in and he starts grilling me on the SAR, and I was like, oh. And like ever since and he came back when I saw him come back, I was like, all right, cool, we did okay. And so ever since, it's always been the biggest compliment when people I admire come to the shop, and it means a lot, man. So thank you.
I was coming to cycling clubs and think I was unrecognized, so that's why I was fine.
Well, buddy, cheers. Enjoy that
Cheers.
rouleau. I
Oh,
hope that we get to see each other very soon. And thank you
we
for
get
joining
out
me.
of this very soon.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we can break bread soon.
Yeah, cool. Thank you
All
so
right, man.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye. Thank you.
Take care, bud.